It's not a rumor anymore. It's a potential earthquake. A proposed trade is floating around that, if executed, could send Kristaps Porziņģis straight into the heart of enemy territory, the Los Angeles Lakers. This isn't just any deal. This is the kind of move that doesn't just alter rosters. It rips at the very DNA of a franchise. We're talking about sending a cornerstone of Boston's strategy to their most hated rival, and not for a blockbuster return, but for Gabe, Vincent Maxi Kleber, and Shake Milton. Read that again. 3 rotational role players for a starting big man who, when healthy, stretches the floor like few in the league. So what's really behind this eyebrow-raising scenario? Why would Brad Stevens even entertain a deal that hands a rival a matchup? Nightmare like Porziņģis? And what message does this send to the rest of the league and the locker room? On the surface, this smells like a cold, calculated maneuver to navigate around the NBA's brutal new collective bargaining rules. Specifically, that second luxury tax apron that's got GMs shaking in their suits. Kristaps Porziņģis is making over $30 million next season. The guys coming back, collectively, they're cheaper and on shorter deals. It's flexibility in the form of cap relief. But here's the uncomfortable question no one in Boston wants to ask out loud. Is this about more than money? Could this be an early admission that the Porziņģis experiment just didn't work the way they hoped? Injuries, inconsistent minutes, and playoff concerns have hovered around him like a cloud. Trading him for less talent might seem reckless, but it could also signal something scarier, that Boston's front office no longer believes in the core it just paid handsomely to keep. And it doesn't stop with KP. Multiple reports have already linked Jrue Holiday to possible trade talks, including with the LA Clippers. Yes, the same Jrue Holiday who inked a 4-year extension less than a season ago. He's now 34, and his production, while still solid, has shown signs of wear. And let's not forget, Holiday is a native of Los Angeles. If the Celtics are trying to reset their roster without detonating it, sending him to a hometown team would be a softer landing for both sides. But what's the real strategy here? If both Porziņģis and Holiday are on the chopping block, does that mean Boston is quietly pivoting away from a win-now mentality? Or are they betting on finding value in smaller deals, stacking assets to make a bigger play down the line? Either way, these aren't the moves of a team confident that its current group can run it back and dominate again. Now add Al Horford's easy enough future into the chaos. At 38, he's an unrestricted free agent. And according to ESPN's Tim Bontemps, teams like the New York Knicks are already eyeing him as a veteran piece with playoff pedigree. The kicker? Horford has ties to Karl Anthony, Towns through the Dominican national team. That's not nothing. Could the Celtics lose a locker room leader and a defensive anchor to a conference rival and ship off 2 core players in the same offseason? That's not retooling. That's a controlled implosion. If Horford walks, Porziņģis gets traded, and Holiday is moved, Boston loses nearly all of its size, experience, and two-way versatility in one summer. In what might be one of the most shocking twists of the NBA offseason, rumors are intensifying that the Boston Celtics, yes, those Celtics, fresh off a championship run, could put 2024 Finals MVP Jaylen Brown on the trade block. You read that right. The very player who helped deliver Banner 18 might be packing his bags just weeks after etching his name into Celtics history. But before you dismiss this as wild speculation, look closer. This isn't just about basketball, it's about survival. Boston's ownership is staring down the barrel of a projected $238 million in luxury tax penalties. This isn't just an expensive roster, it's an unsustainable financial time bomb. And Brown, with his Supermax deal, is right at the center of the storm. Boston won it all, but at what cost? With Jayson Tatum set to miss the start of the second 2025-26 season due to a torn Achilles, the franchise now faces the dual threat of being over the second apron and lacking their franchise cornerstone to start the year. That's a nightmare for any front office. Which begs the question, are the Celtics willing to sacrifice a Finals MVP to buy themselves flexibility and avoid long-term financial gridlock? According to Greg Swartz of Bleacher Report, both the Atlanta Hawks and the Philadelphia 76ers are monitoring the situation closely. But here's the part that isn't being discussed enough. This isn't just a financial dilemma. It's also about power, perception, and legacy. For Atlanta, the allure is obvious. Jaylen Brown is a Georgia native, and the narrative of a homegrown star returning to lead the Hawks into relevance practically writes itself. Paired with Trae Young and the rising Jalen Johnson, Atlanta could finally field a trio with both firepower and marketability. But here's what isn't obvious. This would be a massive gamble for Atlanta's front office. The Hawks would likely need to part ways with multiple rotation players, and maybe even Onyeka Okongwu or AJ Griffin to make salaries match and convince Boston to listen. That's the kind of betrayal that would ignite the Eastern Conference arms race. And yet, if they include Paul George in a sign-and-trade framework and loop in a third team to absorb cap hits, this fantasy suddenly becomes plausible because the new CBA doesn't reward loyalty to top-heavy rosters. It punishes it. Starting next season, Boston's ability to make mid-season trades, use the taxpayer EMLE, or even sign ring-chasing vets on minimum deals will be severely limited if they stay over the second apron. That means any injury, regression, or locker room rift becomes exponentially more dangerous. Trading Brown now might be the last chance for Boston to reset the board and build around Tatum with flexibility in a move that would redefine the entire NBA landscape. The Boston Celtics are being linked to one of the most audacious trade ideas in recent memory, targeting Giannis Antetokounmpo, the two-time MVP and the very face of the Milwaukee Bucks. Yes, you heard that right. Despite just winning an NBA championship, Boston's front office isn't resting. Instead, they're reportedly considering a full-scale power grab that would shake the league to its core. The package? According to a detailed report from Ryan Stand of Sports Illustrated, the Celtics could send Kristaps Porziņģis, Derrick White, and multiple first-round picks to Milwaukee in exchange for the Greek Freak. But what's the real story behind this jaw-dropping proposal? At first glance, it makes no sense. Why target Giannis, a player still under contract through 2027, with no official trade request on the record? But this isn't about availability. This is about leverage. Giannis may not be actively asking out of Milwaukee, but cracks are beginning to show. The Bucks were bounced early from the playoffs. Their roster is aging, and despite years of title aspirations, the franchise looks less and less like a contender with each passing season. Meanwhile, Boston's front office is thinking long-term. Jayson Tatum is out with a torn Achilles. Jaylen Brown's future is murky. And the new CBA is turning luxury tax penalties into roster death traps. In this climate, acquiring a generational force like Giannis, arguably the most physically dominant player in the game, could be a way to ensure the franchise stays elite for the next decade, even if it means tearing down a championship roster. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Why would the Bucks ever trade Giannis? The reality is, behind the scenes, the franchise is quietly running out of time. Damian Lillard's arrival was supposed to reignite a title run, but it didn't. Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton are aging out of their prime, and the bench lacks depth. Milwaukee is at risk of becoming what the 2017 Cavs were in LeBron's final year, a franchise clinging to the past while pretending the core still has juice. The proposed Celtics deal offers something the Bucks currently do not have: future flexibility. Porziņģis gives them size and floor spacing. Derrick White is a two-way guard who fits in any system. And the draft picks? Those could be gold in a few years, especially if Boston's experiment falls apart. Also, let's not ignore this. The Bucks might not want to risk losing Giannis for nothing if he grows frustrated and forces a trade a year from now. Better to control the timing and the return on their own terms. Trading away Kristaps Porziņģis and Derrick White, two key contributors to a title, would absolutely send shockwaves through the Celtics locker room. This isn't just a basketball decision, it's a cultural risk. White, in particular, is beloved for his selflessness, grit, and ability to step up in big moments. Porziņģis, despite his injuries, was a mismatch nightmare all season long.